Hey, welcome back to Mrs. B Reads. I'm here with my period 3 class. Hi. Aren't they cute? And this is more summer reading book chat for you. Okay, so every year the Rhode Island Middle School Book Awards puts out a list of fantastic books. My kids are required to read at least one of those books for their summer reading. Their second book can be whatever they want. And so I'm talking to you about all 25 that are on that list this year. You can check out last year's books. Those videos are posted here as well. So I like to group them. We did graphic novels last time we chatted, right? And who doesn't love a great graphic novel? These are the informational textbooks that are on the list this year. They are fabulous. First, let's talk about World War II and the Japanese internment camps that happened here in America. Are you guys aware that right here in America, we took our Japanese citizens, our Japanese American citizens, and we put them in detention camps, detainment camps. They were sort of out in the Southwest because we were nervous that they were spying for Japan. We were at war with Japan. Do you know about any of this? Raise your hand if you know a little bit about this. Raise your hand if this is news to you. You never heard this before. Okay, this is a shameful part of America's past. And this book does a really fantastic job of showing exactly what happened. Dorothea Lange, who was a photojournalist, remember we read about the photojournalist right in our study sync, remember? So Dorothea Lange is another photojournalist. Toyo Miyatake and Ansel Adams. So those 3 photographers, their work is featured here. Where Japanese Americans were imprisoned during World War II. California, New Mexico, it looks like maybe North Dakota a bit. So there's all the internment camps, right? So it was mostly out in like the Southwest region. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, there were some over in Louisiana as well. Seen and unseen. Early in the morning on December 7th, 1941, Imperial Japan bombed the U.S. Navy base at Pearl Harbor. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Pearl Harbor. Awesome. Hours later, in faraway Los Angeles, Toyo Miyatake was photographing a fancy wedding. Suddenly, agents from the U.S. government barged in. They arrested several men and took them away. So this gentleman was a very well-known photographer, professional photographer, but because he was of Japanese descent, he was seized, as it were, and put into a detention camp. Up and down the West Coast, this happened to hundreds of families. Families were torn apart. Japanese and Japanese Americans were afraid. They had the face of the enemy. They needed to show that they were not disloyal to the U.S. government. Mothers pulled kimonos from their closets. Fathers took calligraphy off of walls. Books, letters, and photographs from relatives in Japan were heaped in a pile, and everything was burned. So these Japanese and Japanese American citizens had to hide the part of them that showed their culture and their cultural background. And that's terrible. You never want to ask somebody to be less than, right? We never want to ask someone to strip away their culture because it's not accepted. Like, that is not cool. So they were put into these camps and they sent photographers there, and they didn't want the photographers to take true pictures of the camps. They wanted people to think, oh, they're fine. We're just holding on to these folks so they don't cause any trouble. But you can imagine, these camps were not a pleasant place to be, right? Families were all rooming together. They were like barracks. They were kind of like army barracks, right? They were certainly not deluxe 5-star accommodations. And this book does such a fantastic job of showing what that time was like in history for our Japanese and Japanese American citizens. I learned a lot from reading it, and it's quick. You can see most of it is artwork. It is fast, fast, fast. So I really recommend you doing this. I know a lot of you like to learn about and read about World War II, right? I have a whole bookshelf in my classroom of just World War II-esque books. And I'm buying this for my classroom library, and this book is definitely going to join those ranks. So I highly recommend it, all right? This is really, really good. Seen and unseen. Yes? That's the first one. Second one. Okay, who believes in aliens? Raise your hand. Okay, someone said my mom does. I don't know if you heard that. We had one hand go up and one hand kind of go up. So you guys, like it's kind of a joke, like, right? Ooh, the aliens did it. In 1947, there was this gentleman Mac Brazel. Here he is. He lived in New Mexico. He was a sheep farmer, so where he lived was very desolate, not very well developed. Not a lot of light out there at nighttime, okay? He has come in from a long, hard day of working on his sheep farm, and he's just kind of looking out, you know, at just sort of taking in what he can see. And all of a sudden, this bright light, and it looked, he said, like a thunderstorm, but it wasn't thunderstorm colors. It was like red. And it stayed in the same spot. And it lasted for a really long time. And then, whoosh, something crashed. And he was like, what the what all? So the next day, he goes out with his kids, Bessie, and I forget his son's name. They hop in the truck. They go driving around his property, and they find all this stuff, like debris. And it was made of material that they had never seen before. Some of it was like a silvery kind of foil, and you would straighten it out, and then it would fold itself right back up into its original shape. Some of it was almost like broken sticks, but it wasn't plastic and it wasn't wood, and they had no idea what the material was, okay? Now, here's the thing. So he starts talking to his friends about it. He's like, what the heck, you guys? And his friends are like, geez, you should probably tell somebody in charge. So he goes to the sheriff, and the sheriff contacts the FBI and the Army, and they all say, oh, that was just a weather balloon. Do you know what a weather balloon is? This is a picture of a weather balloon. Well, come to find out, it was not just a weather balloon. And they gathered up all of the debris, and they sort of squirreled it away, and it became this big kind of hush-hush operation that it still is out in Roswell, New Mexico. Do you know, have you ever heard about Roswell, New Mexico? So Area 41, I drove by it with my daughter. We were out visiting the Southwest for her high school graduation. And it's all chain link fences and security posts, and you can't get anywhere near it. And there are these airplane hangars. And the theory is, the rumor is, they actually have aliens that crashed and landed here, and that's where the government is keeping them to study. And all the material that this guy found, this debris that nobody could quite figure out what it was, is there. And shortly after this happened, there was a pilot flying near Mount Rainier and Mount Adams. And he saw 9 objects, and he didn't know what they were. And the way they behaved and the speed at which they flew was not normal for that time. This was the late 40s, early 50s. And so he came, when he landed, he asked a whole bunch of people, like, were you doing like training flights? Was there some sort of aerial show going on? Nope, nobody knew anything about it. And so he drew what he saw. This is what he saw. And that's where the term unidentified flying object came from this guy's drawing. He said they moved like saucers, and that's where the term flying saucers came from. But they actually weren't shaped like saucers. They were shaped like this. It almost looks like Batman's, right? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, crazy, right? So I'm reading through this book, and they have newspaper articles and documents and photographs, and it's really impressive, the research that this author did, Candace Fleming. So if you're at all interested in, are aliens real? I would recommend you read this, because, and even if you're skeptical, aliens aren't real, I'd read it, because it might just change your mind. So those are the 2 informational nonfiction texts on the Rhode Island Middle School Book Award list for 2025. I hope you check them out. I hope you like them, and I hope you like and subscribe. Thanks. See you. Bye.